Okay. Welcome to the QT2 webinar tonight. And um, my name is John Spinney. I am a professional triathlon coach with QT2 Systems. And tonight's webinar is on an inside look behind the rationale, at the rationale behind recovery workouts. Okay, so this is actually kind of there's a lot of mistakes people make in this area. It's one of the most common issues we bump up against as coaches at QT. We see this all the time, and that's why we wanted to do this webinar. So thanks for joining us, and if you're coming into this as a recording, thanks for watching. So what we're going to go over tonight is why recovery workouts are important, how to incorporate recovery workouts within your weekly structure of workouts, and also the pitfalls of mis-executing your recovery workouts, which is super common. All right, so why do we have easy days? Okay, basically the easy way to think about it is training plus recovery equals fitness. So the athletes that are continually improving are ultimately balancing recovery with the training stress that they are producing. So they are giving themselves enough training stress to create the adaptations, and then they're giving themselves enough recovery to actually reap those gains. Okay, so the athletes that are then the athletes that are training and then with not enough recovery end up obviously with injuries, sickness, burnout, mentally especially, and it's just not a good recipe for what we're trying to achieve, which is ultimately long-term progress. That's one major thing that is behind a lot of what we do at QT2. We're really trying to get at long-term progress. Training and too much recovery is, minimal fitness gains, and those athletes that don't improve or get slower as the season continues, essentially not creating enough training stress or to really create the adaptations that we need. So, purpose of recovery workouts: to push oxygen-rich blood through the muscles, which ultimately stimulates recovery. We're trying to facilitate recovery from the last key workout. Key workout meaning best effort workout like BSTs, hill bounds, speed work on the bike or speed work on the run, Tabatas, the PPT workout. Those are all key workouts that that we want to make sure that we're hitting those hard, and I'll get to that a little bit deeper. Also, as far as the purpose of recovery workouts, we're building durability in a very low stress manner. Okay, and that durability is what we're trying to develop, and that's what you're going to really call on in the second half of an Ironman, when you really need your body and your peripheral system, so all your muscular system, to be able to stimulate your heart rate under extreme fatigue. Okay, and recovery workouts help build that. Recovery workouts also, if they're done correctly, are mentally refreshing, and they actually you can shed stress, especially sort of work or life-related stress. They're very good for letting go of that. Recovery workouts should be refreshing. If they're not refreshing, you're going too hard. So let's get into this a little bit more. Like I said, this is one of the most common mistakes that QT2 athletes make, is that they're going just too hard on their zone hour days. So once the athlete is in the build phase, you have typically 2 key workouts per sport per week. Okay, and so this is sort of a common expression: hard days hard, easy days easy. So you want to come into those workouts fresh enough that you can hit that high intensity, or that you need to, which is really what is needed to be able to stimulate the gains that we're trying to get. you have to be fresh to hit that level. If you come into those workouts already kind of cooked, you're not going to be able to push those limiters, is what the language we use. So the easy days are very easy. Shorter workouts, very low intensity. The goal is not to see how fast you can go at your zone R heart rate or things like that. And really just to get some blood pumping through, oxygen, refresh. It's an active recovery. Never force a ramp in zone Rs. If you just feel totally shelled and tired, just go as easy as possible. You can't go too easy with a zone R workout. It absolutely should be as easy as possible. Okay? So as far as sort of the weekly structure, you know, we try to have for lower volume athletes 2 no leg days and higher volume athletes 1 no leg day. So that might be a day where you would have just a swim. Anyhow, okay, next slide. All right, this is where we start getting into some of this real common mistake of people going too hard on their easy days and not hard enough in their key workouts. And what happens is kind of like what I was saying before, is they're not able to hit the needed stress levels to make adaptations that cause higher fitness. And then their easy workouts are also not easy enough to facilitate recovery. So you end up in this gray zone where your hard workouts aren't really doing much for you. You're not stimulating, you're not pushing that upper end of what you're capable of in those key workouts like BST, speed work, whatever. You're just too tired to be pushing up into those levels, and that's what creates those adaptations that we want. So if you're not able to hit those, you're just kind of in this gray area, and then you're going too hard on your zone R day workout, ZR workout, and you're not facilitating recovery. So you're just kind of in this gray zone. And I'm not saying all QT2 athletes do this, but this is a common mistake, and it's very common outside of QT2. This is something you see all the time. Super just common endurance athlete kind of mistake. Just remember, if there's one thing you take away tonight, it's hard days hard, and that's very hard. I mean, breakthrough kind of workouts that you need to push to be able to hit that level. And the easy days, easy. You can't go too easy on those days. Absolutely easy. The goal is not to, you know, see how fast you can go at a low heart rate or anything like that. It's just super easy. So let's go through some examples, and I've seen this so many times. We see it at our camps. The nice thing at our camps is we have athletes there that have been really executing what I'm talking about flawlessly, and so for the newer athletes, it's really eye-opening. It's actually really interesting to witness this. So, and some of these examples just came up out of some of our camps. So, an example done right: an athlete with a 20-minute power of 350 watts. Okay, this is a pro athlete to have in mind. Has an average wattage of under 110 watts for a Z bike workout. Okay. An example of it done incorrectly, an athlete with a 20-minute power of 220 watts averages 180 watts on their ZR bike. That is not good, and that's exactly what we're talking about as a major mistake. ZR workouts are not about speed. They are not about hitting new fast paces in ZR. And I have definitely seen folks chime in, our mission athletes on the forum, you know, things like, hey, you know, I can't believe how fast I just went in ZR. You know, I had like a higher wattage and a higher speed in ZR. No, we're not. That's entirely something you should not be going towards. Okay, you can absolutely, and we want to encourage you to think about things like that in Zone 1 and even Zone 2. So, where you know in your Zone 1 run or bike, you're looking at, especially in the second half of those workouts, you're looking at producing the best watts or pace that you can without going over that Zone 1 heart rate cap. Okay? And that's actually a nice indicator of fitness, those outputs. So wattage or pace are going to improve in Zone 1. Okay, we're not talking about that. That's a whole separate thing, and that's good. Zone R workouts are not that. ZR is about recovery. Okay? And when it's done right, it's hard. You have the hard days you're hitting them hard, and the easy days you're hitting them super easy. And the example of, at our camps, when you have pros that have super high 20-minute power wattages that are very strong cyclists, and when the other athletes see how easy these folks are riding, it's very eye-opening. I just want to back up to this photo. This photo was actually at our Florida camp last year. Okay, everybody's up on the hoods. It's very easy. We're just cruising. So that's actually me right there in the front, and there's Pat Wheeler, John Barrett, and I forget some names of everybody else here, but we're going super easy, just soft pedaling. Okay. All right, let's come back here. We went over these examples. The other nice thing is that recovery workouts can be a stress reducer. So, and actually so one of the points I wanted to make here is that oftentimes an athlete, due to life stress and logistical stress, work-related stuff, and also their training is they're really getting kind of cooked, and they need some more recovery. The recovery workouts sometimes need to those would be the first things to kind of pull out or skipped. Okay, so with like my one-on-one athletes, if I have an athlete that I can just tell, I know that they're sort of on the edge of either a little too much stress based on what's going on in their life as well as work. As the coach, we have to help balance that, and sometimes I need to pull something. If I'm going to pull something, it's typically a ZR workout. Okay, so that's kind of something to think about if you are really burning the candle at both ends, and by the way, I encourage everybody to read Jesse's writing on the stress budget. If you haven't read that, make sure you make a point to read that. It's one of the most important things you'll read related to all of the training information that we're throwing at you. So just remember, the body has a sort of a finite ability to handle stress. Okay, stress is stress, whether it's coming in as training, whether it's coming in as life stress, emotional stress, work-related stress. Okay, your body can only take in so much. All right, and you have to kind of sort of balance that budget, and you're going to have to pull things back, and that's okay. So, for instance, if somebody is not getting enough sleep due to work and has a really crazy schedule and very high stress work situation, and then is also trying to have a very high stress, heavy training load, and they're sort of going over budget, they're not going to be able to adapt to the training stresses that we're throwing at them completely. They'll adapt to some of it, but they're not. You can only swallow so much of that stress and make the adaptations that are going to allow you to get fitter. If it's too much stress, it just beats you down, and it actually is not making you faster at all. It's making you slower. So too much stress is going to slow you down. The right amount of stress is going to speed you up, and too little stress is going to slow you down as well. So we want to, that's really what we're charged with as coaches is getting that right for you guys. Anyway, if an athlete is overdoing it with life stress, ZR workouts will be the first to pull, and that's something I mentioned already. ZR workouts should be refreshing. Okay, it's soft pedaling on the bike. It's jogging on the run. It's too slow to be considered running. Okay, a couple other items that come up as questions. Some people like to do their ZR bike workouts on a road bike, and there's really nothing wrong with that. Absolutely, mix that in. That's fine. I'd say when you're in the final 5 to 6 weeks of a key race, I'd encourage you to do your ZR bike workouts on the I'm sorry, I just wanted to check one thing. Something just popped up on the webinar here. Just bear with me for a second. It's absolutely fine to use the road bike, but in the final 5 to 6 weeks, I'd encourage you to use your TT bike because it's more specific. Again, you're soft pedaling. And the reason that it's okay on the road bike is because, you tend to be up on the hoods a lot, even when you're on the TT bike in the ZR. But one thing you can do, and I actually did this today for my ZR bike, I mean, you can, get in your aero position and just see just as easy as you can possibly go, and just, getting really comfortable in your TT position. I mean, the more time in that TT position, the better it is going to be for you, especially with Ironman. It's a long time to be on the bike. So the more you can keep all your soft tissue, especially in your glutes and hamstrings and hips, lower back, just sort of primed for that TT position, the better off you are. So again, just in the final 5 to 6 weeks, I'd really encourage you to stay on the TT bike. As far as running, I mean, definitely staying on the trails for your ZR runs is a great idea, and just because it's softer, it's going to be a little less stress on your joints. All right, so overall recovery. Okay, so what are we talking about? So we're talking about really the core diet. So outside of training, you should be really targeting the nutrient-dense foods. So fruits, veggies, lean meats, nuts and seeds, omega-3s, which are going to help with overall recovery by reducing inflammation. And one of the main reasons why we want to hit all these nutrient-dense foods like fruits and veggies and the nuts is to really kind of top off all of our minerals. So potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium is one that there's so much of that in really everything, and obviously there's a lot of sodium in our training fuel. So you don't really need to target sodium when you're not training, unless you're like maybe a day before a very hot race. But outside of that, just really target those core foods. The fruits and veggies and the nuts and the meats. You're going to really be getting a lot of potassium and magnesium. And you just want to come into all your workouts and your races with those minerals topped off. And another big mistake a lot of folks make is just not enough water outside of training. So when you're at work, you should always have a water bottle with you or some sort of water source, a glass, whatever, and 80 to 90 ounces of water a day outside of training. Okay, and the check on that is that you should be urinating, and it should be almost clear. So like a very light lemonade, if you have, I hope this isn't kind of gross for anybody, but basically, it should not look like apple juice. You want it very light yellow, like a lemonade, and otherwise you're not drinking enough water. So again, it's this sort of concept of topping things off, and you want to come into all your workouts hydrated. You want to have all your minerals sort of topped off, and that you're going to perform better that way. And it's I mean, there's just so many actually aspects around overall health that you're contributing to at the same time by eating this way. The other way to think about it is just eat real food. So nothing that's real processed and just sort of junk in it. If you're eating something in a package and, look at the ingredients list. If there's more than, 2 to 3 ingredients, you're starting to kind of, it's not always good. So unless you know exactly what each of those things are, I mean, if there are words you can hardly pronounce, that's not good. So try to stick to these core foods: fruits, veggies, lean meats, nuts, and seeds. And actually, low-fat dairy is something that should be on this list. And then training, we're talking about fueling. So depending on the athlete and their sweat rate and whatnot, but basically eating every 30 to 45 minutes. That's typically a gel or a half a bar, and then 1 bottle sports drink per hour minimum. So athletes with high sweat rate, it's going to be 2, sometimes more for larger athletes, but typically a high sweat rate athlete is going to be around 2 bottles of sports drink per hour. and then a recovery drink immediately after, and then sleeping at least 7.5 hours each night. By the way, for anyone interested who has an iPhone, there's a free app. Actually, it's a 99-cent app called Sleep Cycle. Very kind of interesting app that somehow measures your the amount of time that you spend in different sleep stages, and then it essentially scores each night of sleep. It's just an interesting tool. A lot of folks with QT2 are into data and might be interested in that. Monthly recovery. So, we're just kind of talking about the general structure of training a little bit just right now. So there should always be a recovery week every 3 or maybe 4 weeks. And that's because you have those 2 to 3 weeks that are sort of on weeks where we're really pushing, and by the way, this concept is sort of more of a macro level of what I've been talking about from the beginning. So, hard days hard, easy days easy, rather than, there's no gray zone training. And by having a recovery week every 3rd or 4th week, it's that same real concept, just at a sort of a more macro level, where we're allowing the body to recover so that then we can hit those next few weeks hard and be stimulating what we basically training hard enough to create the adaptations that we need. And if you're not having a recovery week, you're sort of coming into those weeks cooked. You're not able to hit the level of stress that you need to create those adaptations. So that's why we have those recovery weeks. And a week like that, it's typically that athlete would have 2 days off completely that week, and would have 2 to 3 no leg days as well. And those are good weeks to get massage, deep tissue, or ART. The active release techniques is a great tool. If you have a provider in your area, they're amazing. And then we typically race at the end of that recovery week. By the way, massage, deep tissue, or ART, you'd want to schedule that at the very beginning of the week on a Monday or Tuesday if it's a race week. Okay, so, and then we typically race at the end of that recovery week, and that's the best chance to push speed potential limiters. And essentially, translation, what that means is that same concept I've been talking about, being fresh enough to really push hard enough that you create adaptations that ultimately push up your speed potentials. And in QT2 language, speed potentials are your 400 swim, your 20-minute power, your 5K, and as you push those up, basically that's your sort of core fitness is improving, and then we want to, of course, extend that out as far as possible, and we do that with volume and durability. So different methods of restoration, recovery, nutrition, we've talked about that, the training nutrition. By the way, as far as the training nutrition, by fueling yourself during the workout, you're actually you're helping the recovery for the following day. So there's no bonking allowed ever. If you bonk, you're going to feel like crap the next day, and then that day's training is affected. So by fueling yourself that day, you're ultimately going to speed the recovery from that workout you're in. Sleep, massage, compression clothing, compression boots like Normatex. There's another slide. We'll talk about that a little bit. So yeah, that concept I was just saying, start the recovery process while you're working out, and that's what we do with training nutrition. You don't ever want to get into a situation where you're doing any sort of starvation training or anything like that, which some other training companies and protocols will do. Basically, there's so many reasons why you don't want to do that. For one, it's awful recovery for the following day, and also your immune system takes a big hit. When your body, when you sort of are not giving your body fuel during a workout, it's very hard on the immune system. Then if you get sick, then you start losing consistency. Lose consistency, you don't do as well with long-term progress. Okay. Always have a recovery drink, and Durox is sort of the gold standard, but there are other things you can do. Low-fat chocolate milk is a great option especially if you're in a pinch. For folks who don't do dairy, there's always, you can do a rice protein, because Durox has whey protein, so some athletes with food-related allergies can't do that. So doing a rice protein with mixed in with a sport drink or apple juice works just as well, or almond milk. Basically, bonking, never. You should never bonk, and depending on how bad the bonk was, it can take days to fully recover from it. Sleep. The bedroom is where the magic happens, of course. It's really one of our most key assets in terms of improving. If you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to have a very hard time absorbing all the training stress that you're putting on your body. Okay, I mean, sleep is the true recovery. It's the gold standard. So, I mean, it's where your body is releasing natural growth hormone to start the recovery and rebuilding process. There's no perfect amount, but 7.5 hours is a good starting point. Trying to get more when you can make up for the days that you are below 7.5. And by the way, like I said, check out that app called Sleep Cycle. Very cool. Massage. So a lot of these things you can do on your own. So foam rolling. There are different kinds of, there's the trigger point therapy balls and different kinds of things that can be used, even a softball. Basically anything that is going to allow you to really sort of push on the trigger point in that muscle and sort of squish it out and try to open that up and get rid of those little adhesions, little knots in there that then allow fresh blood and to sort of flush through there, and ultimately that loosen it up. I did a whole webinar on this, actually, trigger points. Check it out if you're interested. So foam rolling, active release techniques, and that's going to help leave delayed onset muscle soreness. It's going to reduce swelling, increases circulation, get oxygen in there, increases range of motion. So, I mean, the biggest way to increase range of motion is really addressing the trigger points, following that up with stretching, and you will address your range of motion. I mean, one of the biggest reasons we athletes get injuries is actually due to range of motion. So when range of motion becomes limited, okay, and you have some muscles and soft tissue that is sort of shortened and limiting some aspect of your technique, whether it's a swim stroke, a pedal stroke, or a stride. So then just think about over thousands and thousands of repetitions that something is getting kind of held up and it's pulling too much on that joint, and that starts rubbing or causing friction on the joint, on the connection point or insertion point, and it eventually starts causing some inflammation, and then you have an injury, an overuse injury. So we really want to hit and make sure we have good range of motion. Anyway, check out that webinar I did on that. Compression socks, definitely a good idea. I have them on right now. This is actually common. You see somebody talking about, hey, I want to get these crazy $100 socks from XYZ company and blah, blah, blah. You don't need to do that. The drugstore, these Futuro ones are awesome. They're like the best ones I think you can really get, and they're like $15 at a drugstore like CVS or Brooks or Walgreens. I'm not kidding. They're amazing. Actually, all the QT2 coaches, we use these, and highly recommend them. And it's worn to help prevent pooling of blood in your lower legs. And just a quick PSA: you should always wear compression. If you're an athlete, you should always wear compression socks when you're flying. Okay. When you're flying, if you have just done some workouts or a race, there is a slight risk of developing a deep vein thrombosis, DVT, and that's not something you want to play around with. Compression socks can help prevent that. Anyway, PSA over. Compression boots, Normatex, great item. They are obviously expensive. Essentially, the Normatec is sort of the leader of the whole world of compression boots. It's a peristatic pulse wave, and it starts at your foot and starts compressing, and it sort of works its way up your whole leg. But as it comes up, it does something that the other compression boots don't do. It sort of will let go, but then hold below that spot as it works up to the next level. So it really is flushing everything up. It's pushing all of the blood in your legs up towards your heart, which allows everything to sort of be flushed and cycled through.